It took me forever to do this one because I know it's the hardest one I'm going to have to do. But I was requested to continue the series. So here I am. I met Tony at school, and I was 15. My parents had sent me to a school for um, bad kids. um, they didn't really know how to handle my gender expression, so to speak. The fact that I hadn't begun transitioning yet, but my mannerisms and my attitude and sort of everything about me was ultra feminine. And they felt that, a therapeutic boarding school might be the thing that could turn me around. And so I went. Tony. Tony. Tony was the least likely of everybody that I thought I could befriend. Because Tony was a jock. And I was me. Um, Tony had this deep and abiding love for basketball. I actually think that basketball was his first love and everything else was just a mistress to him. And he could play his behind off. He was amazing. And he was friendly with all the girls. And just classic, that kind of guy. Everybody would have wanted to take him to prom. And I, in those years, and we're going back to, oh goodness, 94 here. I was so quiet. You wouldn't think so now, but I was so shy and just to myself. I mean, I had my little circle of friends, Jamie and Tina and Rob and Kristen, but I didn't, I wasn't the in crowd at all. But I never felt like that because, our own little circle was enough for me. But needless to say, in the grand scheme of things, I was painfully shy. And I would stay in my room a lot. A whole lot. Listening to music and writing poetry and, just kind of trying to express myself as artistically as I possibly could while being in a really, really oppressive and repressive environment. Because again, the goal was to masculinize me. So any kind of outwardly feminine expression was frowned upon, and I would often get in trouble for being myself. So I was in my room one night, and I was listening to music. I can't even remember what song I was listening to. It was probably Rhythm is a Dancer. This is how far back it goes. By Snap. Y'all remember Snap, right? And Tony walked into my room without knocking, mind you, and said, "Why are you always in here?" Now, you have to understand, for him to even speak to me was like monumental because people did not speak to me. Nobody spoke to me. Like, nobody in my dorm, so to speak, would have a conversation with me because I was so the gay one. And everyone avoided me like the plague. So for this, 6'1", skinny, crooked smiled jock to come into my room unannounced and strike up a conversation with me was unheard of. And he's like, "Yeah, why are you always in your room?" Well, they don't seem to want me outside of my room, so here I am. He said, "What are you doing?" Really freaking obvious question, by the way. I'm listening to music. He said, "Oh, okay. What's up. So, play me a song." Huh? This is what he said, "Play me a song." And I was so confused. Would he play you a song? He said, "Yeah, play me a song that reminds you of me." Okay. So, I took out my Cyndi Lauper 12 Deadly Sins album, which I wore the hell out, and I played him True Colors. Ugh, God, okay. And something came over his face, and he smiled, and he said, "Play it again." So, I just, played it again. And as I'm playing it, he said, "Dance with me." Huh? He said, "Dance with me." And he took me by the hand. And I mean, again, my transition had not yet begun. I was 15 years old. So I was, presenting as male. And this was the guy. I mean, he was just the man on campus. And he took me by the hand and we danced. And he kissed me. And his kiss was so soft. And changed my life up until that point. I fell head over heels in love. This was the kind of school that never would have, I'd had whatever you would call sexual experiences on that campus because it seemed like every confused guy on that campus kind of wanted to experiment with me. But never something that touched me on an emotional level. And I had never gone all the way by choice prior to him. So needless to say, we struck up this very secret romance. And when I was around him, I felt normal. I didn't feel like he saw me as a man. I didn't feel like he saw me as a woman. I just felt like he saw me. But it has to be said, he never treated me. You know what I mean? He was definitely. We fell into our roles very easily. I don't just mean on a sexual level, but I looked to him for guidance. I looked to him to kind of have the final say in things. It was all very stereotypical Puerto Rican. um, but I loved him. And I told him, everything there was to know about me. He told me everything there was to know about him. He hadn't had a good family life. And he hated being at home with his stepfather and his mom and stuff like that. And just, we spoke about a lot. And I told him that, I was classically trained in vocal, that I sung. And in those years, I sung opera. I was a coloratura soprano. And singing was what gave me my greatest joy. And so he would make me sing for him all the freaking time. And he he could never, he could never translate from the Italian. So he would just listen and, "That sounds really good. Yeah, you sound great." But he was my first real love. And he had, dalliances. He had relationships with biological girls, and however silly it may sound now, it never bothered me because I knew that I was the only one me in his life. Um, and it remained that way until 1997. Tony was bipolar, manic depressive, and very afraid of losing his sense of stability. After I left that school, I ended up going home. I returned to my mother's house, and he ended up going to a group home. I lived in Massachusetts, and he lived in Connecticut. We would speak, I mean, on the phone, I mean, like whatever, any chance I could get to speak to him, I would. Um, but I knew that, I knew that something was off. I couldn't place my finger on it, but I knew that something was off. And I had started working at a center for LGBT youth, doing like peer educating and like advocacy work and outreach and things of that nature. And by that time, I had begun my transition, and he was completely supportive. I mean, there was just, well, it all makes sense now. You can actually do that? Yeah, go for it. Like, he was all for it. Um, but apparently, as I came to find out much later, the group home that he was in, I believe, please don't quote me on this, y'all, was closing. Um, there was going to be some shift in the stability that he had found. And the thought of returning home to his familial structure, which had been an abusive environment for him, scared him to no end. By this time, I was 17 and he was 18. No, we were both 17. Yeah. Um, on June 2nd of 1997, he broke into his stepfather's closet and took out his shotgun and put it in his mouth. And my world and everything I had believed to be good in it shattered. Because this, setting aside my personal feelings, this was a kid who could have been anything. There was literally no limit to his potential. I was called on a Tuesday and the funeral was a Friday, and I don't know how, if you ask me to this day if I took the bus or the train, or I don't know how I got down to Connecticut, but I did. And they had cremated him. And to see this man, who was 6'1", with the nicest smile I have ever seen in my life, reduced to a box. I passed out. And they played that damn P. Diddy and 112 and Faith Evans remix of Sting's song. I believe they call it I'll Be Missing You, which I've never really been able to listen to since. And now we're 14 years after that fact, and it's really only in the past couple of months, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, that I've been able to come to grips with not turning my life into a shrine for my lost love. I lose it a little bit every June 2nd and every May 5th because that was his birthday. Um, but I'm starting to pick up the pieces in a way that I hadn't before. Every year gets a little more bearable, but it to date has been one of the greatest tragedies I've ever known. And I really haven't sung since until the Troy Davis video. um, but yeah, singing kind of went into the ground with him. I wish y'all had known him. I miss him. But I persevere. So, that's Tony. See you next time. One love. And I see your true colors shining through. See your true colors. That's why I love you. So don't be afraid. Let them show your true colors. Your true colors are beautiful, like a